All right, let's dive in. Today we're going deep on the Jubilee year, straight from Leviticus chapter 25, the King James Version, of course. And to help us break it all down, we've got Matthew Henry's commentary from 1710. Now, Jubilee, it might sound like just a party, right? But trust me, it's a whole system with social, economic, even spiritual layers.
Absolutely. And to really understand the Jubilee, you got to start with the Sabbath year.
Okay, the Sabbath year. Leviticus lays it out. Every seventh year, the land gets a break. No planting, no pruning. Just complete rest.
Yeah, total reset for the earth.
Now, I get letting the land replenish itself.
Yeah.
But the source says you can't even harvest what grows naturally.
Right.
That's like free food.
Seems counterintuitive.
It might seem that way now. But think about it. It's acknowledging that the land isn't just for us to use. It needs time to recover, to regenerate, for everyone's benefit in the long run.
Like a built-in sustainability system.
Exactly. Something we're just rediscovering in modern farming.
Wow. So if nobody's farming, who gets to eat what does grow? That's where the community comes in. Verse 6 specifically says the food is for everyone.
Yeah.
The landowner, their servants, strangers, even the animals.
So it's shared. There's a system, not just a free-for-all.
Exactly. Provision for the whole community.
That's fascinating. But how does this Sabbath year connect to the Jubilee?
Well, after 7 cycles of those 7 years, you hit the 50th year. That's Jubilee.
Okay, so every 50 years, I can imagine the anticipation building.
Oh, yeah.
And it kicks off with a trumpet blast on the Day of Atonement. What a way to start things. Is there a reason for the timing?
Definitely not a coincidence. The Day of Atonement was all about forgiveness and reconciliation, setting the stage for liberation and new beginnings.
It all ties together, huh? And when it comes to liberation, the Jubilee really goes all out. Leviticus talks about liberty throughout the land. People get their ancestral land back. Families are reunited. Debts are forgiven. It's like a total societal reset every 50 years.
A great way to put it. Social justice, economic redistribution, hard to imagine today.
I can imagine. So how did buying and selling land even work? Was it like today?
Not quite. You couldn't just buy it outright. More like a lease until the next Jubilee.
So like a long-term agreement?
Right. And the price wasn't fixed either.
Wait, the price fluctuated. How so?
It depended on how many years were left until the Jubilee.
Oh, interesting.
Closer to the Jubilee, lower the price.
Makes sense. Fewer years on the lease?
Exactly.
So even if someone hit hard times and had to sell, they weren't losing their family land forever. More like a loan, with the Jubilee ensuring it returned.
Right. Built-in protection against losing your heritage?
Did that stop the wealthy from just buying up everything?
Absolutely. Prevented that kind of accumulation and disparity.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about land, right?
Yeah.
Leviticus mentions not oppressing each other in buying and selling. Generally speaking,
Yeah.
was that meant to be taken literally?
Absolutely. Ethical behavior was woven into the whole system.
Wow.
Fairness, compassion, that was the mandate. Taking advantage was strictly prohibited.
It's amazing how Jubilee addressed poverty, especially with this ban on exploitative lending.
It wasn't just about preventing exploitation. It was about actively providing support, an obligation to help those in need, including strangers.
Not just charity,
Yeah.
but a requirement, part of the law,
What is
a
that?
built-in safety net. Nothing like that today.
No, not really.
And the source is clear about usury. No excessive interest on loans.
Right. No predatory lending.
Amazing how these ancient principles are so relevant.
Definitely resonates with today's debates.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
so much more than just an old legal code, timeless principles. But what about servitude? Leviticus mentions Israelites becoming servants due to poverty.
Right.
Was that like slavery as we understand it?
Important to distinguish it. Israelite servants had rights and protections.
Okay.
More like indentured servants with a set term, not property.
And the Jubilee automatically freed them.
Yes, it did.
Must have been powerful knowing freedom was coming.
Absolutely. A powerful reminder that everyone, regardless of circumstances, deserved a second chance.
Wow, this is heavy stuff. So many connections to today's issues. And we haven't even touched on the spiritual dimension yet. How did their beliefs inform this whole system?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting. Their beliefs are woven throughout. The Jubilee wasn't just laws, it was part of their covenant with God.
Okay, that makes sense. So how did living with this system, these regular resets, affect their daily lives, their beliefs? Did knowing everything would be reset every 50 years change their behavior?
It's fascinating to consider, isn't it? Imagine that, living in a society where every 50 years, debts are gone, families reunited, a clean slate. How would that shape your view on wealth, possessions, even time itself?
It would be a huge shift, like a pressure valve, releasing tension and inequality. But did it have any downsides? Did people take advantage knowing it would all reset eventually?
That's a great question. It's possible some might have been tempted. But remember, this was rooted in their covenant with God. Ethical conduct was paramount. Fairness, honesty, compassion emphasized throughout.
It's not just following the rules, it's the spirit of the Jubilee.
Right.
Justice, mercy, recognizing everyone's dignity.
Exactly.
So did they see it as a spiritual event with social and economic side effects?
Yeah.
Or the other way around?
It's hard to say. Their worldview blended the spiritual and practical. The Jubilee expressed their covenant with God, their relationship with the land, each other, their own well-being.
A holistic system.
It was.
Seems like it needed a lot of trust, communal responsibility.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't work if everyone was just out for themselves.
You're right. Shared belief, commitment to the common good, putting the community above individual gain.
It's amazing to think this was actually implemented, not just a theory, but real life.
It was.
Could any of this work today? We struggle with inequality, poverty, debt.
Good question. The Jubilee was designed for ancient Israel, but the core principles, fairness, compassion, interconnectedness, those are timeless.
It's true. What strikes me is how radical it was. Not tweaks, but a complete overhaul. Reimagining a just and equitable society. But let's be real, we can't just implement a Jubilee year today, can we?
Direct application would be challenging. Our world is so much more complex.
Right.
But that doesn't mean the principles are irrelevant.
So maybe it's not about replicating it exactly, but understanding the essence.
Exactly.
How can we translate those values into solutions for today?
That's the question. What would a modern-day Jubilee look like? What systemic changes could we make?
Big questions.
Yeah.
What elements of the Jubilee hold the most potential, do you think?
Debt forgiveness is a big one. So relevant today. People crushed by unsustainable debt. Imagine the impact of periodic debt relief.
It would be huge, life-changing for so many. But would it be enough?
Alone, no. We need to tackle the root causes of inequality, too. That's where the Jubilee's land redistribution gets interesting.
Right, but we can't just start redistributing land now.
No, not directly. But we can look for other ways to distribute resources and opportunities more fairly.
Like affordable housing, access to education, support for small businesses.
Exactly.
Leveling the playing field.
Finding modern equivalents for those Jubilee principles.
It's not just material resources, though. The Jubilee addressed a spiritual need for renewal, liberation.
You're right.
How do we translate that to today's world?
That's a key point. The Jubilee wasn't just about economics. It was about restoring balance, right relationships with the land, each other, a sense of the sacred.
So how do we create that renewal, that reconnection? In a
Wow.
world so focused on individualism and material success, what would a modern-day Jubilee for the soul look like?
Yeah, it's amazing how it all comes together. Like it wasn't just rules, it was deeper than that.
Right, woven into their whole belief system.
Exactly.
So, like, how did living with this system affect them? Knowing everything would reset every 50 years, did that change how they acted day to day?
It's a question worth pondering, isn't it? To live in a society where debts vanish, families reunite, everyone gets a clean slate. Wow, it would reshape your whole perspective, wouldn't it?
On everything, yeah. Like, did it make them less worried about wealth? Or, I don't know, more reckless? Knowing it would all be reset anyway.
It's possible some might have taken advantage.
Yeah.
But remember, it was all rooted in their covenant with God. Ethical behavior was a big deal.
Right.
It's repeated over and over. Fairness, honesty, compassion.
So not just following the letter of the law,
Yeah,
but the spirit of it, the big picture.
exactly.
So was it more of a spiritual thing with social and economic side effects? Or the other way around?
It's hard to separate the two. Their worldview is different. The Jubilee was about their relationship with God, with the land, with each other.
This whole interconnected system.
It truly was.
Seems like it required a ton of trust,
Oh, absolutely.
If everyone was just looking out for themselves, it wouldn't work.
Exactly. Shared beliefs, commitment to the community, putting the needs of others first.
It's mind-blowing that this system was real. In practice.
It is remarkable.
It makes you wonder, could we adapt any of this today? I mean, look at the problems we face. Inequality, poverty, debt. Those are all things Jubilee addressed.
It's tempting to think so, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the Jubilee was specifically designed for ancient Israel.
True. Their society was very different.
And our world is vastly more complex.
Right.
But that doesn't mean the core principles are useless.
No, I get that. So it's not about copying and pasting. It's about the underlying ideas, right? So
Exactly.
how do we translate those ideas to today's problems?
Now that's the million-dollar question.
For sure.
What would a modern Jubilee even look like?
Yeah, what systems would we need to change?
Big, big questions.
What parts of the Jubilee do you think are most relevant today?
Debt forgiveness comes to mind immediately.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a huge burden on people now, unsustainable debt.
I can only imagine.
Think of the impact if we had periodic debt relief.
Life-changing, absolutely. But is that enough on its own?
It's a good start, but probably not. We have to address the root causes of inequality. And that's where the Jubilee's land redistribution gets interesting.
Yeah, redistributing land today, that's a tough one.
It would be incredibly complex.
But it makes you think.
It does.
Maybe not literally redistributing land,
Yeah.
but finding ways to make resources and opportunities more available, like affordable housing, access to education, helping small businesses.
Exactly, leveling the playing field.
Giving everyone a fair shot.
That's the spirit of it.
But the Jubilee wasn't just about material stuff, right? It was also about a kind of spiritual renewal, a sense of freedom.
You're absolutely right.
How do we bring that into today's world?
That's a really crucial point. It wasn't just economics. It was deeper than that.
Right.
It was about restoring balance, our relationship with the land, with each other, even a sense of the sacred, something bigger than ourselves.
It's a beautiful idea, but so different from how we live now.
It is, isn't it?
So focused on individual success, material things.
It's a challenge.
How do we create that kind of renewal, that feeling of connection in today's world? What would a modern Jubilee for the soul even look like?
Yeah, it's like we're so busy just getting through the day. We've lost sight of what really matters. Talk about self-care, wellness. But maybe we need something bigger, a real societal shift to bring back that balance.
Yeah, it's like we're patching up cracks
Mm-hmm.
when the whole foundation needs work. The Jubilee had this focus on the community,
Yeah.
on something bigger than just material stuff.
Right, a different way of thinking about how we live.
Exactly.
But how do we make that real today? What would a Jubilee for the soul even look like? Is that even possible in this world?
It's a good question, a real challenge.
Yeah.
But I think those Jubilee principles can guide us. Remember, it was about restoring balance, right? Relationships, not just wiping away debts, but creating a better society.
Right, more just society, more harmonious.
Exactly. So maybe it starts with recognizing how connected we are.
Instead of always striving for individual success, we think about what it means to thrive as a community. That's it.
But how do we actually make that shift? It's one thing to talk about empathy, but it's hard to put it into practice, especially with all the messages telling us to focus on ourselves.
It's not easy, that's for sure. But I think we can start by changing the story we tell.
Okay.
Highlighting examples of cooperation, compassion, celebrating those who are making a difference.
Shifting what we value.
Yeah.
Instead of just individual achievement, we focus on collaboration, kindness,
Exact.
caring for each other.
And that shift needs to happen everywhere. In our schools, in the media, in politics, even in how we raise our kids.
Wow, big changes.
It's about creating a culture where compassion is a strength, not a weakness.
This has been a really amazing conversation. We started with the Jubilee year in Leviticus, and now we're talking about creating a better world in the 21st century. The Jubilee feels like a blueprint, not just for economic change, but for a deeper kind of renewal.
It is, isn't it? That's what these deep dives are all about, starting with a specific topic and ending up exploring these big human questions.
Yeah, it's powerful.
The Jubilee reminds us that we have the power to change things.
Right, we're not stuck.
We can build a society that reflects our best selves.
I'm feeling inspired, but also a little overwhelmed. Creating a more just world is a huge challenge.
It is, no doubt.
But the Jubilee shows us it's possible.
It does.
We're not bound by the limitations of the present.
Exactly. We can imagine and create a better future.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked some ideas and gave you something to think about. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving for a better world. One Jubilee-inspired action at a time.